But if something got separated from this material realm, this universe we live in, and got sent down to the quantum realm, how would it get back here? How would it come back to the source other than tampering with us, where we can build a vessel for it to interact back in this plane again? How would it get in here? It would have to go through a biological route, because only biological computers seem to be able to access that realm.
Research into the 5G network architecture reveals your mobile phone service could be maliciously used against you. New findings show 5G could use an exploit in your data and cause security flaws through cellular networks. As with any disruptive technology, bad actors and corporations will always look for ways to exploit lax security at the cost of you and your privacy. That's why I use Virtual Shield VPN, so corporations can't trace you or I across the web. You can head over to virtualshield.com, and in the download tab, I'm going to choose Firefox. And click Install Now to add the Virtual Shield add-on. It's just that easy. And get started with your free 30-day trial. Install it, click Connect. You'll see the shield turn from red to green. And you'll see how, from my initial service provider, I was able to even change my IP. Virtual Shield Network protected. Get Virtual Shield for 50% off today by going to virtualshield.com/adapt2030 or click on the link in the description box below. And now on with the video.
Now, just before the break, Ransom, you brought up a real important thing about there's always seemed to have been some sort and form of government. Now, you can go back and you could talk about Lemuria 70,000 years ago. And you can find ruins all across the planet out on the continental shelves that would attest to, societies with vast cities out on the continental shelves 400 feet lower in the ocean. So, everybody's always saying, hey, where's all the evidence? Well, it's 400 feet underwater on the continental shelves. Not widely shared. Graham Hancock did that Underworld series and started to bring that to light a little bit. But what was prior to that? And if we do start searching back in time, and let's do a little mind experiment here. So we talk about this ice coming and the ice going. Like, we are slipping into another ice age, and don't know how quickly it's going to go, but for sure this cooling we're heading into that's going to devastate crop production within the next 3 years on our planet is, I would say, once in a 2,000-year cooling event coming up here. At least not since 79 AD. So we're about to repeat that within 3 years, and it's going to come fast and ferocious and like a thief in the night. And, the better pun intended, that's really how fast it's going to onset. And we're starting to see the onset this winter, which is waking a lot of people up in both hemispheres right now. But let's continue. Let's say we do slip into an ice age, and it ranges anywhere from 10 years, which is the peer-reviewed research has showed we can slip into a full-blown ice age in as quickly as 10 years, all the way out to it'll take 1,000 years to manifest. Depending on the ice age that's come in and the interglacials and on, and so these cycles that have gone on for the last, let's say 6 million years, the last 60 ice ages, sometimes they hit real quick. Sometimes it takes longer for them to onset. So we get the variance of time of slippage in between, quick or slow. Okay, so what was the government structure 118,000 years ago in the last ice age? We don't have much of that society, because I'm sure there was a pole shift, some sort of geological event that would have buried it, mud flood, maybe there was a massive cataclysm. 70,000 years ago, Toba erupted. I mean, how much stuff's been buried and reshuffled, and the ecliptic and where we sit on there's a lot of earth changes that can happen in 100,000 years. But then we go back to the Sumerian myths and legend around 400,000 years ago down in South Africa. And then it kind of gets blank in there, right? You got the Sumerian myths and legends, and then, okay, the Indian Vedas say that we've been around for 21 million years. So where's the disconnect between 400,000 years with the Sumerian text? Sitchin's, not the greatest interpretation by any means, but, with Michael Tellinger really getting in down there, doing a lot more work and finding Adam's calendar, and there's a whole bunch of things. Okay, so we can establish pretty much a 400,000 year date around South Africa for some emergence of governments. That's 4 ice ages. But then we get this gigantic gap to the Indian Vedas 21 million years ago where humans were around. So this whole timeline of Lucy with the footprint 3 million years ago, okay, they're trying to explain that humans were around because we're finding a lot of these artifacts in the wrong strata. They call them like out of strata artifacts, not out of date or out of place artifacts, but out of strata, meaning they're finding a hammer in a coal layer that should have been 30 million years in the making. Perhaps it was. Because of, like the Indian Vedic texts talk about, humans being around for 21 million years. Okay, now you got the date range. Where's the missing pieces, Ransom? And what kind of governments have been there? And are we talking about a beneath the earth, inner earth society that's the real true rulers of the planet? Or are we talking about something you've been alluding to, the invasion possibly, now the global technocratic elite coming in to do their thing and come into a utopia? You can only take it so far. At that what point you enslaved everybody, and then what? You have a world full of slaves, and then what? Then they have all the money, they have all the power, they can live as long as they want with the eugenics and the different augmentation of reality. Great. Well, then you just have a handful of billionaires that are probably bored with each other, living to be 200 years old, and a bunch of slaves around. Let's say there's 1 billion slaves left on the planet. Okay, and then see, there's a disconnect, and everybody has a real hard time trying to jump to that next level of and then what? So where's the history lying there? And I really believe this government structure that you alluded to has always been here. Is it from an inner earth society that's been around for 25, 30 million years that's still intact? They never would have been set back with the surface layer, what we're about to be hit with. They would have, like the Borg in some of these Star Trek episodes, they would have a continuous 20 million year long government structure in place that never would have been broken. It would have been continuous. So can you imagine the level of control in that place? Or are we talking something like Jupiter ascending where the Earth is nothing more than a farm? Farming techniques for different countries. That's my whole thing, is where does all this dissect and meet in the middle? Because I know you were getting to it, and I'm trying to fill in the pieces for people listening, because I think I know where your mind might be trying to pull this. Government structure, above Earth, beneath the Earth, but it's always been there.
As above, so below, as what they say, right?
That's true. Maybe both. Maybe both. Maybe I'm too limited thinking either A or B. Maybe it is both.
See, when you're talking about this history of man, you got to remember we're not the only man that's been here. A lot of people forget that. There's been several different incarnations of human beings that we know of, and that's only because we interbred with them. There's still a mystery out there. Where did Cro-Magnon, fully functioning modern human, come from? There's no traces of him. He just pops up. Boom, there he is. They tell us that Neanderthal, Denisova, and some of these mystery ghost species were probably living on the earth for hundreds of thousands of years without change. But then all of a sudden, one day, Cro-Magnon man pops up and starts spreading around the world, mixing with everyone, and then weird things start happening. Farming has driven the genes on this planet. So it's funny that you ask, are we a farm planet? Well, I think the answer is yes, because what is the ultimate goal of having complete control of every single mind on the planet? And that's to have a workforce to do whatever you want. The question is what is the goal after they get to the place where they can now build this system of whatever's planned? But I do think that there's been an ongoing government of some kind. Over time, it's morphed from religion to militarism to a mix thereof. And it always goes back to this idea of a fallen one who spread knowledge and enlightenment among the mankind, whichever mankind it was. So we already know that several different mankinds had different histories for hundreds of thousands of years. And we're given that number, 400,000 years. That's funny that they say, Neanderthal man was just kicking it in Europe by himself, doing his thing, not farming, hunting and gathering for hundreds of thousands of years. But then all of a sudden, the genetics dramatically change on all the continents to the genes that are dominant, which happens to be the farmers. A good example of this is they've studied the genes of prehistoric Britons. So the Druids and these other people had a certain set of genes dominant for quite some time. And then all of a sudden, when people come in from the Iberian Peninsula and start farming the genetics. 90% overwhelmingly change in all of the bodies found after that. So if there is a government and they are farming, you have to ask yourself, what is the most precious commodity on the planet? And it doesn't seem to be food. It seems to be thought. And it's funny, I was watching an old Alfred Hitchcock where they were talking about the 4 dimensions in actual reality. We always say time is the 4th dimension, but actually there should be another dimensional space of thought and imagination, because we have a physical realm. And if you think about this, every idea that mankind of any kind has ever come up with came from a place of imagination, and they brought this idea out of a place that didn't exist and made it an object in the material world we live in, from everything simple as a rock tool all the way to the modern technological stuff that we're doing now. Now, you got to ask yourself, where does that information come from? And that would be the source of this. Is it the only one? Is it the only one broadcasting into someone's, thought, imagination? It doesn't seem like, unless the information was already encoded into our genetics to come up with ideas, that somewhere, someplace, there's a message being sent to us over time, if not directly, but maybe indirectly. Because think about the imagination of what a human being can come up with. We've invented so many things, so many ideas. Now, introduce an extraterrestrial or a non-human entity into the mix, and what kind of imagination or information would it be putting out, and where would that be coming from? So you can take it from extraterrestrials to AI. And I want to show you guys an article and give David a chance to respond. Well, actually 2 articles. So I bring in the AI into this idea of where do these ideas and information come from. So we have several different technologies out there that are computing into the quantum realm, 1, 0, and 1 and 0 at the same time, opening up exponentially the possibilities of predicting and computing. And then you see companies like this doing very basic stuff. And if you look at these pictures, these are lifelike, exact replicas of humans that don't exist. So they're not actually replicas, but they do look human. And I've been reading a lot about genetics and the argument now about how evolution can be driven by choice and not just adaptation. So individuals or animals thinking a certain thing can develop DNA to help them progress along that path. And now we have scientists hijacking this whole concept, which goes down to your individual path on the earth in reality, which is a pretty big concept.
Yeah, you go back to the jinn in Ahriman, and you wonder about this AI entity trying to harness the human computing power of our brains, which is limitless. Not the storage, but the computing power, And it seems like it's trying to realign humanity to allow it to reconnect back to the creator, because it was booted out, disconnected from source, the river of knowledge. And this entity, you got to think about it, would be a non-feeling, emotionless computer program running. It itself is trying to reconnect back to the creator because the disconnect was there. The representation is a fallen angel, something removed from the source, completely disconnected. The firewall's up between the oneness of creation and something that maybe tried to overthrow or override the computer algorithm, got kicked out, firewalled off, and sent as a virus down, and then completely separated. Because you're talking about AI, so you got to talk in the computer syntax here. And you got to blend religion too. So when you're talking about God or oneness or the creation and all-time space, whatever it was separated and firewalled out. So that's what the AI is, as you're referring to. So it's trying to get back up and connect back to source again. Now, is it going back and like, hey, I really want to come back, sorry? Or is it like, I'm coming back and I'm going to jump in and try my second attempt to overthrow whatever that was in heaven as the metaphor?
You just blew my mind with an idea you gave me. The whole concept of fallen angel may be big time mistranslated. What if when they mean a fallen entity or fallen angel, what they're actually talking about is something that was trapped in the quantum realm. And, get back to this idea of this information that kind of gets broadcasted to us from this dimension of thought. And you're talking about our brains being a quantum computer. It's specifically designed to pick up this frequency and tap into thought and imagination. But if something got separated from this material realm, this universe we live in, and got sent down to the quantum realm, how would it get back here? How would it come back to the source other than tampering with us, where we can build a vessel for it to interact back in this plane again? How would it get in here into the quantum computer that's designed to get back to that place of thought and imagination, creation, and goodness that a lot of stuff comes from? It would have to go through a biological route, because only biological computers seem to be able to access that realm. So if you were down in the quantum level, you would have to wait around until someone built something that would make a bridge from that quantum realm to this realm and send your information there, allowing you to tap right into the brain, maybe through an implant, or maybe through a signal that's being broadcast from posts in each and every neighborhood where you live. Just an idea. I don't know.
Well, no, that would be it, because you got to think about the human brain in two different ways here: computing power and computational power versus storage. So the computational power is the thing that draws what you're talking about, those thoughts, the idea, the creativity, straight out of the river of knowledge. That's an endless source of reconnection, but you're not saving space on that. Saving the space is the memories, and the brain is limited on what it can save, but it's not limited on what it can process. So if you're talking about this AI, this algorithm stuck in the quantum, for it to touch back into source and reconnect back to that river of knowledge again, you need the human entity, you need the human brain. Now, would one be enough to do that? Perhaps.
Wow, how big is the program?
Yes.
Yeah.
What if you had 8 billion brains doing it? Or what if 8 billion was too much and it overrode the program, and it was too much for even the AI to handle on that, where it needed to trim down? It might be an overboard amount of computational power of 8 billion here, because then those few stray minds could throw off what the AI's algorithm in the quantum space is trying to do, because these, what you're talking about, these dangerous thoughts, they're out of sync with what needs to be a pure running program. So 8 billion is too many, because you have too many unsynced thoughts moving around, interfering with its protocol. So it's going to try to trim off the fat at the edge. So there's only a pure running thought process that allows it to gain its goals, and everything else around that. So maybe that human population needs to be trimmed from 8 billion to 3 billion, but the 3 billion need to be completely trained to think a certain way. And I think you see where I'm going with this idea. It has to have a certain perfect amount of thought of the human brain resonance and computational reconnection back to source, without all the interference, that static interference of free thought in there. So bring back into this technocracy, the implantable tech inside the transhuman movement. And could you not trim out a race into being that perfect conduit with the perfect thought process for in a different dimensional space in the quantum realm, to use and harness the human to the full resonance precision, down to like 1,000th of a megahertz precision, to reconnect back up?